Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tonight we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gītā, chapter 2, text 9 and 10. Sanjaya Uvacha. Sanjaya Uvacha. Evam Utva Rishikesham Urikesha Parantapa Nayasya Iti Govindam Utva Tushni Babhuvaha. Sanjaya Uvacha. Evam Utva Rishikesham Urukesha Parantapa Nayasya Iti Govindam Utva Tushni Babhuvaha. Parvati Mahataji, should I just read the translation, the purport, then we'll do the responsive chanting on text 10? Is that how I should do it? Yeah? So Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Dhritarashtra must have been very glad to understand that Arjuna was not going to fight and was instead leaving the battlefield for the begging profession. But Sanjaya disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemies. Parantapa. Although Arjuna was, for the time being, overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master, as a disciple. This indicated that he would soon be free from the false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness, and would then surely fight. Thus Dhritarashtra's joy would be frustrated, since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. Text 10. Tam Uvacha Rishikesha Vahasan Eva Bharata Senayor Upayor Madhye Vishidam Tam Idam Vachaha Tam Uvacha Rishikesha Urukesha Parantapa. I'm sorry. Vasanava Bharata Senayor Upayor Madhye Shidantam Idam Vachaha Tamuvacha Rishikesha Vasanava Bharata Senayor Upayor Madhye Shidantam Idam Vachaha Tamuvacha Rishikesha Vasanava Bharata Senayor Upayor Madhye Shidantam Idam Vachaha. Please chant.
Tamavacha Rishikesha Rahasan Iva Bharata Senyar Vyar Madhe Tantam Idam Vacha Tamovacha Rishikesha Rahasan Iva Bharata
Tamovacha Rishikesha Rasani Bharata Siddhantam Vavacha Tamovacha Rishikesha Rahasan Iva Bharata Sinaya Uhayo Maidhe Visidantam Idam Bhasha
Tam unto him Uvacha said Rishikesha the master of the senses Krishna Prasan smiling Iva like that Bharata O Dhritarashtra descendant of Bharata Senior of the armies Ubayo of both parties Madhye between Vishidantam unto the lamenting one Idam the following Vachaha words. Translation. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling, in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Translation again, please repeat. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Purport by His Divine Grace Prabhupada. The talk was going on between intimate friends, namely the Rishikesh and the Gurikesh. As friends, both of them were on the same level. But one of them voluntarily became a student of the other. Krishna was smiling because a friend had chosen to become a disciple. As Lord of all, He is always in a superior position as the master of everyone. And yet the Lord agrees to be a friend, a son or a lover for a devotee who wants Him in such a role. But when He was accepted as the master, He at once assumed the role and talked with the disciple like the master, with gravity, as it is required. It appears that the talk between the master and the disciple was openly exchanged in the presence of both armies, so that all were benefited. So the talks of Bhagavad-Gītā are not for any particular person, society, or community, but they are for all, and friends or enemies are equally entitled to hear them. Om Agnatamarandasya Gnana Shalakaya Chakshu Vimitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya-Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Putale Swayam Bhagavata Vidati Swaha Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Kripamaya Shri Guru Vaishnava Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Krishna Santam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Radha Krishna Sahagana Vitam Shri Shasana Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. O descendant of Bharat, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. So Krishna says later on in the Bhagavad-Gītā, chapter 15, Anudvegam hridam vakyam satcham priyahitam chaya Sodhyaya vyasanam chaiva vanmayanta pujate. That austerity of speech means speaking words that are truthful, beneficial, pleasing, and not agitating to the minds of others, as well as regularly studying the Vedic literatures. So here we are gathered today on this basis, and Krishna is about to speak some words which are pleasing, they are beneficial, but they will agitate some minds, especially those with the materialistic mentality. But that agitation is for purification. Just like when a doctor gives some medicine, it may taste very bitter, but that bitterness is for purification. So this section of the Gita, I've always considered to be one of the most humorous parts of the Bhagavad-Gītā. These two chapters, the first and second chapter, and I never really quite understood the humor until I had a chance to start reading the Mahabharata. It's been translated by devotees like Krishna Dharma and Sankirtan Das, very senior Prabhupada disciple at Vrindavan. And these, as Ratim Krishna was speaking yesterday, how right now we're at the point where the momentum is just building. The first chapter and this first segment of the second chapter, these first 10 verses, are more or less just setting the scene, setting the stage. You know, just like when you go to see a drama, you know, you see there's a scenery, and then there's the time and place, there's the actors, you know, they're all gradually being introduced. And then you see the plot unfolds. And usually in dramatic structure, you see, like, at the beginning of a drama or some literary work, there's a period of time called the stasis, where things are just kind of going along, the world is in balance, everyone's happy. Then all of a sudden and it's what they call the inciting incident. An event takes place which throws the whole world of the protagonist into confusion. And he has to resolve that confusion. So this is at the point now where Arjuna, he's come, you know, it's just in the beginning of the 14th verse of the first chapter, Krishna says, Sanjaya is speaking to Dhritarashtra. I'm sorry, the first verse. And we all know the first verse, Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra, Samavedi Dutsava. The Dhritarashtra is asking this question. Now that my sons and the sons of Pandu have gathered together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, what are they about to do? He's very anxious. He's like on pins and needles. You know, he's so anxious. What about my sons? That's why he's so anxious. You know, because they belong to me. You know, just like sometimes we have an idea. It's my idea. It becomes so attached to it. It's my desire. Right? So Dhritarashtra was so anxious about his sons. What's going to happen? And he became depressed because, you know, we later on Sanjaya explains that Lord Krishna, that he says that the Lord Krishna and Arjuna seated on a great chariot drawn by white horses sounded their transcendental conch shells. Right? Panchajanya Rishikesho Devatantam Jananjaya. That they sound these transcendental conch shells. And it explains later on in that first chapter, Sagosho Dhritarashtranam Hridyani Vidarayat Namas Chaiva Prithavam Chaiva Chumalobhyana Nadayan. That the sounding of these conch shells was uproarious and thus vibrating in both the heaven and the sky, the heavens and the earth. It shattered the hearts of Dhritarashtra. This is the power of transcendental sound vibration. It shatters the heart. So similarly, even ourselves, when we hear this transcendental vibration, it shatters our false ego. And now Krishna is preparing to shatter Arjuna's false ego. Right? Just like here yesterday, we were hearing we're hearing the quote of the 7th verse of this chapter. Karpana dosha padatata, karpana dosha patasvabhava, bhajanvidam dharnamasamudacheta, yakshesham dishtam trupumitam, shishateham shrimam tram kapanam. And now I'm confused about my duty, I've lost all composure because of weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple. Please instruct me. And when H.G Krishna Prabhu yesterday, he was talking about how Krishna was instructing Arjuna. He said the word instruct with such conviction. You know, you think of the word phonetically, instruct. Struct, it's 2 syllables, instruct. Struct sounds like struck, right? You get struck by lightning, right? So Krishna's he's getting ready to instruct. He's also ready to strike. Just like lightning strikes, or lightning likes Krishna sometimes likened to a blue moon, like a blue cloud, right? And sometimes in clouds we see thunderbolts. They hurl into the earth and they shatter whatever they come in contact with. So now Krishna's instructions are going to shatter Arjuna's false ego. And this is where the Bhagavad-Gītā, the teachings, really begin. So it's very interesting now that Dhritarashtra, he's very depressed. But now all of a sudden, he hears 4 words. Can anyone remember what those 4 words are? Na yotsya iti govindam. I shall not fight. And as soon as Dhritarashtra hears these 4 words, he becomes so happy. Haribol! You know, yes, my sons are going to be, because Arjuna, what was Arjuna? He knew that Arjuna was the key player. You know, he was so elated, and now Arjuna's not going to fight. You know, now the Pandavas will just fall like a pack of cards. You know, you just push one card, and all the deck of cards will fall on the floor. You know, it's like Arjuna was like the keystone. Right? You know what a keystone is? It's like this, like any arch. You have the middle stone that takes all the pressure from the other stones. If you take that one stone out, the whole arch falls. So he was like that keystone. And now that he wasn't going to fight, Dhritarashtra was happy. And Arjuna was depressed. But now we go, it's beginning this whole journey now, from text 11, the 2nd chapter, all the way to the 73rd text of the 18th chapter. That journey where Krishna speaks is transcendental knowledge, where Arjuna says, Nashta moha smritam labdha tvat prasadan maya chuta stito smi stikata sandeha krishye vachanam tava. Arjuna says, "O infallible Lord, my illusion is now gone. I am now firm and free from doubt, and I am prepared to act according to your instructions." So this is the transformation that takes place. That not only Arjuna, he is transformed, and through the process of transformation, he transcends. That reminds me of a story, actually. When I saw the second chapter, it brought back some sweet memories of my own Krishna consciousness. There was a devotee, a very dedicated devotee. He used to live in the United States. His name was H.G Das. He was the servant of the king of Chedi. And he was a dedicated lifelong brahmachari, and very dedicated to distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. And one time, he came from New York City. He was a very single child. He only had no brothers, no sisters. His mother, his father had died. His father was a magician, and he died when he was young. And his mother only had this one son. And one time in those days, especially in those days, devotees in the United States used to travel around. We used to travel around in vans, and we used to sleep in those vans. And we used to wake up in the morning in some parking lot behind a Walmart or in some shopping plaza, and we'd find some bushes, and we'd have these little milk jugs, and we'd get out and take our shower in this way. Of course, it was very difficult in the winter, but we didn't, especially in those early days, we didn't have money to buy hotel rooms. And so we used to travel with H.G. And I remember one time, we were in this one parking lot, and it was winter time, and it was so cold. Right now, like in the United States, it's like 30, 40 degrees Celsius below. It's like very cold. And there was no one in the parking lot. It was completely empty. Usually when you go for book distribution, you go to a place where there's people. But this particular day was completely empty. But there was one truck in the parking lot. And I remember the devotees in the van, we didn't want to get out, it was too cold, we were complaining. But H.G. he had so much enthusiasm. He saw that one truck, and he said, "I'm going to go out there." And he jumped out of the truck, and he ran across the parking lot, and with the Bhagavad-Gītā in his book bag. And he knocked on the truck door, and he was so enthusiastic. And the man bought a Bhagavad-Gītā. And one man. So much was his enthusiasm. He was so dedicated. He spent his life in this way. But unfortunately, one time he was traveling. And in those days, the vans used to have these little propane heaters inside. And if you were not very careful, if you did not make sure that the pilot light was continuing to burn, that should be kept gas poisoning. So the two devotees, actually there were three devotees in the van at that time, and both of them left their bodies. The one survived, but he was crippled for life. So he one time actually Chaitanya one time he asked me to please, he was always memorizing Bhagavad-Gītā verses, so he asked me to memorize the second chapter. Of course, my brain is very small, I think I did it maybe for a month, and after that, it fizzled away. But he memorized so many verses like the second chapter, he could quote this chapter like within. But when I see the verses from this chapter, not only does it remind us, of what Krishna's instructions are, but it also reminds us of Srila Prabhupada and his dedication on at the age of 70, coming to America, bringing the Bhagavad-Gītā with him at that advanced age, with that intense conviction to spread Krishna consciousness. And it also reminds us how hard he worked to bring this knowledge, and how hard the disciples of Srila Prabhupada are working even today, making so much sacrifice, just like Chaitanya Prabhu made so much, he sacrificed his life for distribution of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Even today now, there's so many devotees around the world who are making so much sacrifice to distribute this knowledge. And so when we read these verses, we can take inspiration from the context in which these verses are coming to us. Actually, there's one verse, of course, today was the devotees here, I think, well, actually, I don't know if they're doing so much here, but I know our Christian God brothers and God sisters around the world, they are celebrating the appearance day of Lord Jesus Christ, a great Vaishnava, which Prabhupada, in many cases, he would honor the Lord Jesus Christ as being, just like Chaitanya Prabhu was an example of sacrifice. Certainly, Jesus Christ was a sacrifice for one who gave his life for spreading Krishna consciousness. So in one of the verses in the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, it explains that the Word of God is living and active. It is sharper than any double-edged sword, more piercing to the point that it can separate spirit from soul, bone from marrow. It understands the thoughts and the intentions of the heart. So these words of Bhagavad-Gītā, now we're thinking, they are living and active. And when they enter our ears, it's not different from Krishna. It's not just like we take prasadam. It's not different from Krishna. It's entering into our body. Right? Now when we hear the words of Krishna, we're absorbing them through our ears. It is not different from Krishna. And it is purified. So, we've already discussed how Dhritarashtra was so depressed. Now he's become elated. I'd like to backtrack a little bit now to share one pastime which relates to this particular segment of the Bhagavad-Gītā. Just like we were discussing earlier, how Krishna was blowing his conch shell, the Panchajanya, right? And I'm sorry, Krishna was blowing the Panchajanya, Arjuna was blowing the Devadatta, Bhima was blowing the palm drum. So, as I was reading these verses, I was contemplating, well, why is it that these verses, this sound vibration of the conch shell was so transcendental that it shattered the hearts of Dhritarashtra? And of course, we all know that anything that comes in contact with Krishna becomes transcendentalized, becomes spiritualized. But also we can contemplate how if we look at the history of the conch shell that Krishna was blowing, right? Krishna was told by his father to go and take instruction from Sandapani Muni. And Sandapani Muni gave Krishna instruction in all the different departments of knowledge, not only spiritual but material as well. Actually, Prabhupada explains that there are the three main subjects that Krishna and Balaram learned were politics, military science, and ethics, because they were Kshatriyas. And to be a Kshatriya, these are required knowledge. These are required departments of knowledge. Especially, it's interesting the juxtaposition of military science and politics, because if you don't perform these activities according to ethical codes, that's why ethics, to apply political principles according to codes of ethics, to apply military principles in an ethical way, which is we see from the example of the Kshatriyas on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, how they had agreed rules of engagement. You will not fight an enemy who is not armed. You will not fight an enemy who is running in retreat. You will not. There were so many rules that there's a civilized form of warfare. Even though warfare is the most horrific, experience. Especially, of course, don't know if anyone here was alive during World War II, but it was like such a horrific war. 16 million people were killed. Of course, Kurukshetra was even more horrific. But the thing is, with World War II, civilian populations were devastated. But with this war, it was a civilized war. So even though there was about 600 million soldiers were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it was away from civilian populations. So it was done according to certain codes of ethics. So Krishna learned these codes of ethics from Sanapani Muni. And after he learned all this knowledge, and of course he learned many other departments of knowledge too. First thing he learned was how to sing, how to write songs, how to perform dramas. Then he learned how to paint. He learned also the arts. Actually, speaking about music and military science, Srila Prabhupada says, so this is a little aside, but Prabhupada says that just as military science is necessary to maintain social order, so is music. It's interesting, a little side note. So anyway, so after learning all these different departments of knowledge, Krishna and Balaram were requested, they went before Sanapani Muni, is there anything we can do for you? To show our deep gratitude, our appreciation for what you've given us. So then Sanapani Muni went to his wife. I thought that was very interesting. Here is the Guru of God who's going to his wife for advice, asking her opinion. And she said, yes, well, ask Krishna to please return our dead son. And Sanapani Muni, he wanted to have Krishna do something extraordinary, something really extraordinary, because he knew how extraordinary were his disciples. So he said this to me. And Krishna Balaram, as you know, last time he went to the beach of Kshetra. He asked the ocean deity to please give back the son who had drowned. And the ocean deity said, well, I didn't take your Guru's son. It was taken by a demon named Panchajanya, who was in the form of a conch shell. And Krishna dove into the ocean. He went into the conch shell, this mighty conch shell. He killed the demon. He brought the conch shell back. So when Krishna's blowing this conch shell on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it's showing it's transcendental because it's in contact with Krishna, but it's also showing his dedication to the principle of honoring Guru, of honoring the spiritual master, of giving, expressing gratitude, service for the knowledge that has been given. Similarly, Arjuna, he's blowing his conch shell. Devadatta, he's called Dhananjaya. Why is he called Dhananjaya? Right? He was asked to go collect wealth for Yudhisthira, to cooperate with his brother, to bring back wealth so he can perform a great sacrifice. Bhima is asked to go and he's blowing his conch shell. He's called Vikradar, Bhima Karma, performer of Heraclean tasks. Srila Prabhupada says, why is that? Because he could kill great demons like Hidimba. Right? Why did he kill Hidimba? Because Yudhisthira asked him. And he was cooperating with Yudhisthira. He said that this, you know the story, I'm sure you know the pastime, where Hidimba was a Rakshasa and he was eating everyone in the village while the Pandavas were in exile. Right? And then the Brahmin family that the Pandavas were staying with, their son had to be sacrificed to this Rakshasa. And they were crying, and the Pandavas, Yudhisthira said, why are you crying? He says, well, this is the situation. So Kunti said, let Bhima go. And Bhima took this whole cartload filled with, I don't know if you call it prasad, but it was foodstuffs, right? To satisfy this demon. And whoever was driving the wagon was also the human sacrifice. So he's driving this wagon and he's eating the prasad, And the demon Hidimba, when he sees his wagon, it's almost empty now of all the prasad. He says, how dare you do this? This is meant for me. He becomes extremely angry. And so he didn't attack Bhima. And of course, we know that Bhima is so powerful. He is immediately, kills. So, because of Bhima's willingness to cooperate, this added the transcendental, in other words, the sound vibration of these conch shells was transcendental, not only because of the contact with Krishna, but because Krishna's devotees had agreed to cooperate with each other. And this creates a transcendental atmosphere. Just like Srila Prabhupada says, you will show your love for me by how you cooperate. Just like in the Holy Bible, right? Christ says, I give you a new commandment. Love each other. As I have loved you, love each other. By this all men will know that you're my disciples, because you loved each other. It's very easy. There's so many institutions around the world, can build big buildings. And of course, there's so many great projects going on around the world in terms of building and technological advancement. But what people are really hankering for is to come into the atmosphere where people have loving reciprocation. This creates the Vaikuntha atmosphere, the atmosphere of love. That love is not sentimental. That love is based, to have that love, that divine love, requires knowledge. It requires Krishna consciousness. There's so many forms of consciousness. There's money consciousness, there's country consciousness, there's pet consciousness, there's so many different types of consciousness that people have. But it's only until we have Krishna, when we put Krishna in front of all those other different types of consciousness, then those, as Prabhupada says, you can have many, many zeros, right? But they all add up to nothing. But as soon as you put one, then they have value. So this is how the devotee is able to give value to their life. And those who are in this path are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Gurus, those whose intelligence is many, those who are irresolute, their intelligence is many branched. So devotee, they fix their consciousness on Krishna. And they become, in this way, they become resolute in purpose. They have a purpose of life. Without that, there is no purpose to life. As we all know, otherwise we wouldn't be. So, I just want to express my deep appreciation for having this opportunity to be in this holy association of so many saintly Vaishnavas. And at this point, I would like to bring forth some topics of discussion. I'd be more than happy to facilitate that discussion. Or if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask.
Pass my clothes.
Do you have any suggestions for what our meditation can be when we hear a conch shell blowing in the temple? Like, what could we focus on?
It's a beautiful question because it's almost like when Arjuna was engaged in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, his killing of the soldiers was not different from the offering of the flower. He was offering everything. Like Krishna, when we hear that conch shell, it can remind us of what Krishna says in the 27th verse of the 9th chapter. Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat dehosi dadasi, yat tapasi kontaya, tatkuru shamarapana. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer and give away, as whatever all austerities that you perform, do that as an offering unto me. It's the conch shell is remind us, here's a time now to make an offering. I can now offer my, even if we're not able to go to the arti, You know, as soon as we hear the conch shell, you know, and it's following the tradition from the Bhagavad-Gītā, so it's almost like the whole battlefield of Kurukshetra was an arctic ceremony, right? It was like all the soldiers were gathered together on the sides of the Pandavas. They're ready to offer their skills, right? That was their skill. They were Kshatriyas, that was their skill. Right? Isn't that Krishna saying that in the 18th chapter? He says, Yata pravtir bhutanam, yena sarvam idamdatam, sukarmanam tamabhyarcha, siddham vidini manava. By worshiping the Supreme Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, man can, by the performance of his own duty, achieve perfection. So that was their duty, to kill. The Bajari on the altar, his duty is not to, take out a sword and, attack anyone. His duty is to offer the flower. That's his duty. But for the Kshatriyas, that was their duty. So when we hear that conch shell, it reminds us, whatever my duty is, whether it be to be a mother, to raise children in Krishna consciousness, whether my duty is to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, whether my duty is to, give counseling to devotees, whatever it may be. Here's a time now for me to recenter, to ground ourselves and prepare for that offering process. Would anyone like to add to her question?
In Vrindavan, it is very unusual for any of the temples here to blow conch shells, because since the departure of Krishna and Balaram in the chariot of Akrura, that was the last time they blew conch shells. So every time there's a conch shell blown, it strikes great grief in the hearts of the Brijabasis. So I think just our Gaudiya temples are the only ones that blow conch shells in Vrindavan.
Thank you for sharing. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. So it reminds me of another meditation. When Krishna was in Dwarka, they said that one time when he blew his conch shell, the conch shell was so happy to be blown by Krishna that it blushed and turned red. So we can also meditate that blowing the conch shell, just like when we were discussing earlier how the sound of all these conch shells together, like it actually Prabhupada explains in the purport that when they're blowing the conch shells together, everyone was encouraging each other. All the Pandavas were encouraged. It wasn't like on the side of Dhritarashtra, there wasn't that quality. I mean, there may have been some envy there. He's blowing his conch shell louder than mine, or his conch shell's bigger than mine. But the Pandavas were encouraged. Bhima's got his big conch shell, he's blowing. Arjuna's blowing. I'm blowing the best I can. Everyone's blowing the best they could, according to their capacity. And that, so whatever activity we do in Krishna consciousness is encouraging each other. Just like, when we pick up our bead bag to chant, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. We can meditate on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where we're picking up our bead bag to encourage each other, not only encourage ourselves, but to encourage each other. When we sit down together in the Assembly of Vaishnavas, like in Bhagavatam class or in Bhagavad-Gītā class, and we pick up the Bhagavad-Gītā to read the verse, and we chant those verses, just like you bring the conch shell to your lips and you chant the verses from Bhagavad-Gītā. It's like blowing that conch shell. It's creating that synergy, that transcendental spirit of cooperation. So yes, that's a very beautiful meditation. Thank you. Thank you, Parvati. Any more questions or comments? Actually, I'd like to especially thank Parvati Prabhu. I've been coming here for about 20 years now, and it's like, this is the only Bhagavad-Gītā class I see that is going on constantly, without any stoppage. You know, I'm just thinking, like, in the material world, they have what's called a Guinness's Book of World Records, right? We have a Garanga's Book of World Records, you know. I think this Bhagavad-Gītā class that she's has been steadily arranging, you know, it's like a wonderful inspiration. Actually, wasn't Parvati born from the Himalayas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gītā, Maharshinam Brigornaham, Giramasmi Ekamakshanam, Yadyanam Tapyagyosmi, Stavananam Hamalayam. Krishna says, of sages I am Brigu, right? Of sound vibrations I am the transcendental Om. Of sacrifices what? I am Japa. And of immovable things I am the Himalayas. The Himalayas are fixed in their position, right? There's no bulldozer on the earth that can push aside the Himalayas, right? So there's no bulldozer on earth that can push Parvati Prabhu from, you know, doing this Bhagavad-Gītā. So it's a great inspiration, so thank you so very much.
It may be interesting to note that